Always choose.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to be?
Thanks to the migration crisis in Europe, Hungary's profile is higher than ever. But it's controversial. An EU court says Budapest is wrongly denying asylum to migrants fleeing war and deprivation. The government of Prime Minister Viktor Orban is defiant, calls the ruling a joke, and says the EU will pay for its security fence with Serbia. Orban is also accused of cracking down on political activists and free speech. He's even trying to close a university started by the Hungarian-American billionaire George Soros, a man considered a threat by Budapest. So, is Hungary willing to play by the EU's rules and embrace its values, or is its chosen path the way of the future? Peter Szijjártó, Hungary's foreign minister, talks to Al Jazeera. Peter Szijjártó, Foreign Minister of Hungary, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Jazeera. Thank you. Obviously, migration is the big issue that everyone thinks of when we talk about your country, Hungary. This was your reaction to the European Court of Justice's ruling on immigration quotas back on September 6th. And I'm quoting, "This decision jeopardizes the security and future of all of Europe. Politics has raped European law and values." Do you regret using the word rape?
Well, in Hungarian, that doesn't sound that bad.
Really?
Doesn't sound that bad. But you know, to go to the substance, I really consider this decision as a political one.
Why?
Because if you have a look at the European procedure of decisions and the European law, you can see that the decision about the obligatory quotas were made in a way which violated the European regulations, because the highest body, let's put it this way, the number one decision-making body of the European Union is the European Council, which consists of, you know, the heads of state and government.
Right.
And heads of state and government made a decision that they introduce a quota system on a voluntary basis. And afterwards, the Council of the Ministers of Interior and Justice, which are definitely on a lower shelf in the structure than the European Council, they changed this decision and decided in favor of an obligatory quota system. So that's definitely a violation of European regulations, number one. Number two, we have some very important treaties in the European Union, Schengen,
Right.
Dublin, and these treaties cannot be modified by a decision of a ministerial council. These treaties can only be modified through the procedures of the parliaments of the member states of the European Union, consensus all around the 28 members. And such kind of a decision, introducing an obligatory quota, is basically the modification, the amendment of the Dublin Treaty, because it takes away partly the right of the single member states to make their decisions on their own, whom they let enter the territory of their countries or whom they do not let
Now,
enter the territory of their countries.
obviously, Hungary would want to go back and change this and try to deal with the numbers. But given that the people who support the mandatory quotas have won, what can Hungary say in order to get them to revisit this idea of a mandatory quota? And then following on that, in the interim, what's the harm in letting in 1,300 people a year? We're talking about a country of, nearly 10 million,
10 million people, yeah. So we have a principal position here. You know, we think that regarding the migration crisis, we have to bring help where it is needed. So we have to help those people whose rights were violated, either where they live or very close to where they live, because that helps them to return to their homes as soon as possible, as soon as conflicts or military conflicts or wars are over.
But Syria is going on into its 7th year.
Too long time. So our position is that we should not encourage more people to take the life hazard, life risk, and come to Europe, but we should help them to stay as close to their homes as possible. That's why our initiative has always been to give financial aid more to Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, the Kurdish region of Iraq, because these entities have been taken care of many refugees and help them to be able to continue to do so, because if the conflicts are over, these people can return. This is number one. Number two, you know about the obligatory quota system and about those ones who praise it and who says that it's a good decision, because you ask me how we can convince. You know, the thing is that if you have a look at the whole system, you see that the decision has been made more than 2 years ago. And it will expire on the 26th of September, which comes very soon, very soon. And the completion is only 25%, meaning that those ones who are now very loud about the exclusivity of the obligatory quota system as a solution, those countries who are very loudly criticizing us not to take illegal migrants, those have completed this decision up to 25%. So this is hypocrisy. This is hypocrisy.
So what do you do in the interim when you have the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, saying that Hungary, regardless of what the ECJ has decided, isn't living up to its treaty obligations as a member of the world body? Does he have a fair criticism here?
Oh, I met him as he was in Budapest, because, you know, I prefer dialogue. And I prefer those dialogues which are coming first and then statements after. Sometimes we face that bureaucrats or high-ranking officials of international organizations first make their statements and then come to us and ask. I don't think that's the right way to do it. Mr. Grandi, when he was here, I assured him that Hungary has always fulfilled all the obligations we have on the international level. When the migrants came to Hungary, we have offered them the supply and the treatment which is written in the international contracts and regulations. But those people were not ready to go to refugee camps. Those people occupied public areas. Those people blocked the highways. Those people occupied the railway stations. And, you know, I don't think that would be a fair expectation towards any country to give the supply to the illegal migrants where they just want to have it on on public areas. They refuse to cooperate with the local authorities. They refuse to go to the refugee camps, and they have violated two very important European regulations at one time: Schengen regulation, because they violated our border, coming from a peaceful country, by the way, because if you put this in a principle basis, why should we allow anyone to violate our border from Serbia to Hungary? There's no war in Serbia. No one's life is in danger in Serbia. So I think that these are very important principle questions, not to forget about the fact that we as a government have a very important obligation and responsibility. We have to ensure and guarantee security for the country and for the people.
But has there been any security threat from people? I mean, it's one thing to say, yes, there are people camping out in train stations or on sidewalks. We have that problem here in the United States. But is there an actual security problem, or is this more a case of we don't have the social system set up to be able to accommodate people as they're trying to transit to a third country?
No. I mean, once again, the supply was there, but there are rules you have to comply with if you come to another country, right? I mean, if the international rule is that you get your supply at the refugee camp, you have to do it. You have to go there and get your supply. Number one. Number two, if you have a look at the recent developments in Europe, like security-wise, put into consideration the last 2 years, you see many terrorist attacks happened, which was not the phenomenon before. I remember a couple of decades ago, 1 or 2 decades ago, as we were watching news on television, you know, from the Middle East, we felt that this could never happen in Europe, and now this is part of everyday life. So security situation has never been that bad in Europe than currently in modern history, and threat of terror has never been that serious as it is currently. And this is a direct consequence of the fact that 1.5 million illegal migrants were allowed to come to Europe without any kind of control, regulation, or check. And with this, I don't say that those 1.5 million are terrorists. Of course, I don't say that. What I say that such a big, illegal, massive influx of people gave the opportunity for terrorist organizations, you know, to send their fighters, their terrorists, to come to Europe. And there's another problem which was never dealt with, because that was kind of a taboo about which it was not pretty, let's say, agreed to speak about. And this is the issue of parallel societies in some European countries. So the former integration schemes about which we thought that they are the best in the world just simply didn't work out. So integration was not successful in the upcoming in the last couple years or 1 or 2 decades.
So why not try something new? Why not try a new way to integrate people? I mean, Hungary itself has had Sunni Arabs, Sunni Muslims, I should say, in their history going back more than 1,000 years. People from all across the Ottoman Empire and from points east have come through Hungary and shared their history and culture. Why not find a new way to welcome people, to help them settle if that's what they want to do, or help them get to another country if that's what they want to do?
You know, if you go to another country, I think it's an expectation with a good reason that you respect the laws and regulations, right?
Right.
You don't behave aggressively. You don't violate the border. You don't attack police. You don't throw stones and pieces of concrete and bottles and glass on policemen who are there to protect to the border and to ensure and guarantee security. So you know, such kind of a illegal migration is, according to our understanding, a bad phenomenon. We just simply don't like it and don't support it. I mean, if someone would like to come to Hungary, everyone is welcome. Come to Hungary, but respecting the laws, the way you get there, the way you act there, the way you behave there, respect laws and regulations. Unfortunately, I cannot say this about those 400,000 who entered the territory of Hungary in 2015 and then left to Austria and then to Germany.
Well, obviously, the migrant issue is one that isn't just for Hungary.
Yeah, of
it's for all of Europe, whether or not they're EU members, but it has created tension within the EU. There's been criticism from Germany, there's been criticism from France, as you know, of the way Hungary has responded. And it's gotten into a bigger question of whether Hungary shares the EU's values. Is that a fair criticism?
No, you know, I think it's very unfair, extremely unfair, because there's an issue where we don't agree, definitely. We think illegal migration is a security threat to Europe. Others say that illegal migration is acceptable. We don't think it's acceptable, but that should not give the reason to anyone to question the European. Should not question whether Hungary respects European values or not, because we have been members of the European Union. We will be members of the European Union. We are a strong member, and we share the European regulations and share the European values, of course. But you know, blackmailing others, accusing others, putting pressure on others, that's not the European behavior.
Are Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel trying to blackmail the Hungarian government?
No, I didn't put it on a personal basis. What I said, there was many blackmailing against those countries which didn't want to take part in the obligatory quota system by the European Commission, for example. So if you want me to give you examples of blackmailing, like blackmailing is when European Commission or commissioners threaten Hungary or any other Central European country to take away the European financial resources because we don't agree with the migratory policy of Brussels.
Well, Emmanuel Macron has said exactly that.
But that has nothing to do with each other. I mean, European financial resources are based on contracts and treaties. You know, when Hungary joined the European Union and others, when we joined the European Union, we opened up our markets. So many French, German, Italian, British, whatever Belgian companies came to our market.
So that was 2004.
Yeah, made a lot of profit and have been making a lot of profit ever since then. Around 80% of the European financial resources are taken advantage by these companies, you know? So we should be fair and correct and balanced and should not hide one part of the truth and just, you know, put another part on the light. So mixing or combining or confusing the issues of European resources and our position on migration is just simply a blackmailing.
Has the Prime Minister, Mr. Orban, told President Macron to cut it out? Has he said the same thing to Chancellor Merkel?
Well, there was one meeting between the Visegrad countries and France, and as far as I know, there was a, let's say, vivid discussion and debate. And the German government, the German chancellor herself, are pretty much aware of our position. So it's open. We never hide our position. So we are fair. You know, we tell everyone what we think because we can afford.
Is it a worry though that they may, if as you suggest, have already violated EU policies once? Is there a fear that they might actually go to the very economic sharing that makes up the EU and possibly hurt investment in the Hungarian economy?
You know, we have a very open economy.
Mm-hmm.
Export over GDP ratio is around 90%. We have 8,600 euros FDI stock per capita in the country, which shows that we are pretty much dependent on external factors. Mm-hmm. But Germany is the #1 investor in the country. We have 6,000 German companies in Hungary active. They employ 300,000 people, and a little bit more than 1/4 of all FDI stock has come from Germany. German companies are reinvesting continuously. New ones are coming, and by the way, US is a #2 investor, but not member of the European Union, definitely. But the German industry and the Hungarian economy is very tightly linked to each other. You know, if you allow me, I would like to give you an interesting data. Everyone speaks about German-French cooperation, economic cooperation, when it comes to the future of Europe, how Europe will regain competitiveness, and so on and so forth. But you know, there are 4 Central European countries, which is called the Visegrad Group: Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary. The trade volume between Germany and these 4 Central European countries is 55% higher than the trade volume between Germany and France. So that shows that the economic cooperation is extremely tight between Central Europe and Germany, because Central Europe is basically a backyard for the German industry, which is then the backbone of the entire European economy.
Does the Visegrad 4 then benefit because of Brexit, assuming that the UK does leave the EU?
No, I have to tell you that we regret the decision of the British very much, although we respect it because we are not British and it's only the British who can make a decision about their own future. But we regret that decision very much because that causes huge economic loss and I think a significant political loss to the European Union. Because imagine, with British leaving, European Union will lose 1/7 of its economic performance, 1/7. And the single market's gonna be closer, gonna be smaller, definitely, the size is gonna decrease. So that will harm European competitiveness, definitely.
What does it do for Hungarian workers? There are people who are already leaving because they're finding earning money in England or in Wales or in Northern Ireland or Scotland isn't going as far as it used to. Is the economic opportunity available for them back home, or are they going to go somewhere else in the Schengen zone?
You know, there are around, according to the estimations, let's put it this way, around 200,000 Hungarians living, studying or working in the United Kingdom. If you put into consideration these 4 Central European countries, this number can go up to 1.4, 1.5 million. So you can see that we are not the only and we are not the most exposed country in Central Europe in this regard. And I think there are much more Spanish or German working in the UK than Hungarians. So it's a European issue, it's not a Hungarian issue. I just wanted to underline that.
Right.
So for us, it's of course extremely important to come to an agreement with UK which handles 2 issues. Number 1, to guarantee the rights of those EU citizens who have already been there, and working there, studying there, being there. And on the other hand, to come to an agreement about a very deep and very comprehensive free trade agreement, which could ensure trade, investments, and economic cooperation as such to go without obstacles or almost without obstacles forward. Because if you are not able to come to such kind of a deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, then WTO rules would apply regarding the trade between UK and the European Union, which would mean customs and non-custom types barriers. And that would have a really tragic effect on the European economy. Among them, the Central Europeans, because UK is a very important trading partner and economic partner and investment partner for the Central European countries. That's why I say that we regret the decision, because it's a huge economic and political loss.
How committed is Hungary to staying in the Eurozone?
Absolutely.
To the EU, excuse me.
Yeah, regarding the EU, absolutely. You know, we have been members of the European Union and we will be members of the European Union. That's not the question. No one raises this question.
There is another concern that many, particularly in the EU, and to a lesser extent here in the US, have about the freedom of speech, about the freedom of people to participate in civil society, the recent back and forth over Central European University. Number one, is an agreement going to be worked out with New York State on the future of CEU?
Yeah, that's what we are working on. And I really do hope that the agreement will be made. You know, I was the one to sign the agreement with the state of Maryland. Because there are 21 foreign-based universities in Hungary. So when it comes to freedom of academia, you know, I usually use the number 21 foreign-based universities. And you don't hear any complaints from the other 20, right? You only hear complaint from one university. And I can tell you, if the other 20 can comply with the regulations of the law on higher education, my question is why this university cannot. This is a very good university, so that should be able to comply with the regulations. I really do hope that the leadership of the university don't want to take this issue as an instrument to create political scandal. I really do hope that they have the readiness and openness to come to an agreement with us.
But
I'm absolutely ready.
But the leadership complains that they fear that the Hungarian government is trying to squelch freedom of thought, freedom of activity, and accusing the university of actually being political when they say they're not.
But you know, once again, there are 21 foreign-based universities, and if the other 20 do not complain about the new regulation, then I might pose the question that whether they are right or the one is right who complained. You know, I was the one to sign the agreement with the state of Maryland for McDaniel College to continue operations in Hungary. And I would be happy to sign the agreement with state of New York, CEU to continue. But you know, there
What's
are
the problem? What's the holdup?
Okay, there are some regulations they have to. So I give you the corner points. Okay, the key points. Number one, that if you issue a diploma, a graduation,
right,
registered in another country, then you have to have a training program, education program, school, campus in that given country. So far the situation was that the CEU issued US diploma, American diploma in Hungary, but they didn't have a school or education program in the United States.
Is that going to be worked out?
So we hope that CEU will be able to comply with that point of the regulation as well. I think this is the most important challenge now, what they have to comply with. The other 20 can comply. So I really do hope that they can comply as well in the future.
And then finally,
but sorry, sorry for interrupting. But there was some other part of your question as well regarding, you know, the rights and the freedom in Hungary. You know, I have a long experience of fighting perceptions, and you know, I feel it's really unfair that such kind of perceptions are being put forward, that, you know, some kind of rights are violated in Hungary. But I always ask, please give me concrete examples, because if you give me concrete examples, or if anyone gives me, okay, it's not personal,
right,
if anyone gives me concrete examples, I can address that. But you know, this is a kind of a dialogue which doesn't make sense, that one says there's no freedom of media in Hungary, and I said yes, there is. Open the internet, open the newspapers, have a look at the news. You will see that the government is bashed like very badly, let's put it this way, but just normal in democracy, because, you know, I've been in politics for a long time, so I understand it's normal. But these kind of perceptions are just simply not fair. You know, I mean, if there are concrete issues, we are happy to debate. We have many issues ongoing with the European Commission, concrete issues. We try to come to an agreement, but perceptions, fighting perceptions, you know, doesn't really make sense.
But activists do say that under the new transparency law, they're worried that some within the government might use that information to try to squelch their right to free speech. What's your guarantee to these activists that they're not going to be hounded for their political views?
You know, the new law on the NGOs, what you are referring to, as far as I understand, says that if an NGO receives foreign funding above a certain amount, has to publish it on its website. I don't think that really takes away any kind of freedom of action or freedom of speech from the NGOs. They just have to put it on their webpage that they are funded from a foreign resource, because, you know, it's a matter of principle again, that people from the side of the people, I think it's a very legitimate legitimate will or expectation to have those organizations fully transparent from the perspective of financing, who have the aim to influence public opinion, both political parties and NGOs as well. If you as an NGO have an aim to influence public opinion and you get funding externally, then you put it on your webpage. I don't think it's too much. It's much softer than the current regulation here in the United States.
We will leave it there.
Yeah.
Peter Szijjártó, Foreign Minister of Hungary, thanks so much for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you.